So I've received questions from the registration, and some were fielded during the session. So I'm going to start with some of them, some of the questions that were asked during the registration. And the first one is from Garisho Samakhoma, who says that how does one receive the Technician of the Year award? I've seen this in one of the offices. How does one receive awards in general? This is for Lebo and Jesh.
Okay, so I think I'll go first, Jesh. So I think the crucial thing to observe or note about awards is that you need to go beyond the call of duty. Because remember, when we are at the workplace, we are all designing power lines, but the minute you go beyond the call of duty, and the minute you do things that plow back into the industry, plow back into the country, you set yourself apart from somebody else. So normally what you will notice is when an award is out there, I mean, ECSA is having awards next week. So there's going to be like probably a minimum of 20 applicants. What they are going to look for is a niche area. What is that thing that sets you apart from the other candidate? So I think with that being said, this is why I arranged this event, because I wanted you guys to take this PR and use it accordingly. When you volunteer yourself into industry, you get known by people. And remember, even the judge, remember if the judge sees your name and says, hey, I know Jones. Jones is exceptional. Jones is a go-getter. Jones is excellent. That is how you get an award. You go beyond the call of duty.
Thanks, Leo. And that's the fundamentals of getting recognized in any of your registration categories. And you'll find that with many of the voluntary associations and other industry bodies, there's different criteria that one has to meet before you can meet the minimum requirements for an award. But in order to get recognized as the first step for an award, you also have to be nominated by someone. So the idea is that your work needs to speak for itself, your ethics needs to speak for itself, and what you bring to the profession needs to be a testament to who you are and the fact that you're elevating the profession and those around you. So in order to, I think that as Lebo said, if everybody's operating at 80%, you need to shine at 100% and more so that you are seen to take the profession to the next level. And I think that if you follow the criteria, you'll see some of the things that you need to start doing from the day you're in varsity, because the idea is that you need to build, and building a profession is building in layers, and you build on those competencies.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jess and Lebo. Let me also add, the other work that is done is not necessarily the work that Lebo touched on the assessors, reviewers, and moderators, of which myself and Lebo are training them as part of the other group. But there's also work that goes beyond that. There are accreditation of the university programs, that there are people that are involved, and there are also educational evaluation of foreign qualifications, those qualifications that are not any of those Washington Accords, Dublin Accord, and Sydney Accord. And also on top of that, ECSA does the investigations as well. And there are tribunals, people that contravene the code of conduct. So also those people get recognized during the awards. So there's more to the Engineering Council of South Africa, and the ticket today, as Lebo stated, get registered. It's the only time that you're going to get recognized. If you are outside that sphere as a non-registered person, then you are far from the activities. The only way that you can be able to do the Engineering Council's work is to get registered. That's the first ticket, that must be the ultimate. I never thought that in June 2013, I'll be in Korea, whereby I'll be told in the morning 2 hours before that they have nominated us as South Africa to stand up. And that's how I got into the International Engineering Alliance, which was not the plan. We just attended as I was a council member at that stage from 2012 to 2016 with Lebu during our first time on the 4th council. And things happened like that. But the first thing that they asked was, the two things that they asked were, are you registered nationally? Even if you're not on the international register, have you done accreditations in your own home country nationally? Have you done assessments? Have you done review work? Have you done moderation work on applications? Those were the killer part of what they asked for that. And apart from that, you have to compete. I competed with a guy from Canada, who's now today the chair of the AET, which is the Agreement for the International Engineering Technician. At that stage, and it was more because of the experience that I gained and the opportunity that was given to me by getting closer to the action. I always tell people, for you to be recognized, you need to get closer to the action, be at where decisions are made. That people decide on your behalf for now. They set 11 outcomes because many people are closer. It could have maybe been 5, but people who are closer to the action decided your fate. They are the ones who say your registration will be 11 outcomes. Because we've heard these questions, and I'm sitting at the cold face whereby we decide this. We are even amending them now at the higher level of IEA and together with the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, or WAFIO. But it's because of, at least there's a representation. So you can imagine about that. South Africa is taking a decision, for example, on behalf of Africa, on behalf of the other 53 countries. And that's why most of them register with South Africa so that they can get that international recognition to go and work in other countries. Thank you, colleagues.
I just wanted to add to that, Jones, you know, so the candidates that I currently mentor, I always tell them, at the moment, Lebo knows what 11 outcomes are. They are not going to remain 11 outcomes. Ora already touched on how STEM has become STEAM. So things are continuously changing.
Yes.
So I say to the guys, please get registered while you still have people that are willing to hold you by the hand. That's all I wanted to add.
Okay.
Thank you. Then this one is for Jones. Does ECSA actually hold engineers accountable? I want, please answer that with this one. They also ask if ECSA, if I'm ECSA registered, does it mean if I go to work in Australia, I'll also be accredited?
Okay, the question seems twofold. Let's start with the first one of accountability. Yes, that is part of, and many people forget this. When you get registered, even when you're a candidate, you get to be told about the code of conduct. That is the tool that ECSA is using to hold the registered persons accountable. Now, registered persons also include candidates because there's a registered candidate. Once you are registered in the ECSA system, you are held accountable. But now it works in this way. I had a question sometimes, somebody saying, we know about this company that they are doing fraudulent whatever. ECSA does not register companies, it registers individuals. If you remember, I'll just give an example, the story of the 2010 Soccer World Cup collusion between those contractors. The reason why it fell out of the hands of ECSA was that the hiding was behind is the companies that did the work, that did the collusion, not the actual people. You see, we need to make a difference. Company A and Company B collude for business purposes. ECSA does not get involved in that. It's a business transaction. But the actual work that requires competency, the stadiums are still standing even today. That work was done perfectly. So it's got the technical part where the engineers get applied, the work was done correctly. So ECSA have no problem with that. But when it gets to the other part, it has to be reported as a criminal matter. And that's why people get it confused. That, oh, you are doing this, I'm going to report you to ECSA. Now, when they arrive at ECSA, when they report, they don't report Jones Muluisani, they report company of Jones Muluisani. ECSA says, but we don't have the company of Jones Muluisani on the books. But if Jones Muluisani does contravene the code of conduct by either not designing correctly, things happen, whatever, then we are going to be on his case and take him on. And that's where the distinction is about. ECSA does hold people accountable. Now, in other matters, for example, like the M1 bridge, that have on Greyston Drive. That, because there were fatalities, it became a criminal matter. The Department of Labor got in, the police got in. ECSA's job there was to look at the technical part, the design, the supervision, the competent people that were part of the work from the design and the supervision only. If it falls and you find that it is the material that was a problem, or it was negligence of the person who was there, it becomes a dicey material. It becomes a dicey case because the police also get involved. It's not a criminal matter. And I think people don't make a clear distinction as to who's the Engineering Council of South Africa as the regulator of the engineering profession. Now, I don't blame them. Remember, Act number 46 of 2000, the engineering profession has been written for ECSA. It's not written by the CEO at ECSA or council at ECSA. They enforce it. It has been written by someone. Now, the only person who can change that, it is the Attorney General of the country, of the state. So many people blame ECSA for things that they don't have control over. The mandate is being given to ECSA to enforce. On the second part, with regards to Australia, if you are registered in South Africa and you are not on the international register, by virtue of mutual recognition or bilateral agreement, you will be able to work in Australia, depending on what is it that is there. When you get on the international register, it is in this way. You need to have been registered as on the international with the date postnomial of international professional engineer, international engineering technologist, international engineering technician. Now, you're only going to be tested on the local knowledge of the country because we source from the same source. And Lebo can touch on this. Before the lockdown, we were in Botswana training the ERB, the Engineers Registration Board of Botswana, and Lebo was handling that one. With regards to where did we source? If you check on the IEA, it's not 11 outcomes. I think there are 15, but we combined others to suit our own content. I think let me give it to you, Lebo, then.
I think, Jones, you really covered it comprehensively. And I think if like people go and tune into the YouTube, they will see that kind of explanation that the outcomes are the same for all the member countries, but how you actually group them is something else. But everything needs to be taken care of. So the term that is actually used is substantially equivalent.
Yes.
So they don't want it to be cut and paste. It needs to be substantially equivalent, meaning to say all those outcomes are represented in one shape or another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then the next one is for Oradili. How do you apply as a graduate to be part of the Code Like a Girl program if you want to help your community?
So to date, it's been a very much Vodacom internal situation. You know, going to where we have presence across the country and making use of the ICT facilities that we have through the Vodacom Foundation. But we're looking at when we partner, like I said, with Amazon Web Services and Google, how we're going to spread it out. The details about that have not been finalized, but like I said, once I have the details about, you know, community involvement, I will populate my social media on that one, because I know there's a lady in Thohoyandou who got my number from somewhere, and she's like, you need to come here. You know, even if you bring a container with laptops, you must come to Thohoyandou and, you know, eat our mangoes and teach the girls here about, you know, programming and stuff. And what's beautiful is that for me, I mean, in my tertiary, I know his name is Benny. He studied software engineering at UCT. And he was somebody I would reach out like, hey, Benny, I'm in Thohoyandou, you must come and do this. So as soon as we have, you know, the infrastructure, as we have the, you know, the placement and, you know, you know, I want to use, what's the word? Geography now, the place, the people, the equipment, then onboarding people to participate will happen. So once COVID has the vaccine and it's safe, this information will become widely available.
Obviously, as Inspire, we are also going to spread the word. Whatever Aura posts, we are going to share. And definitely what we believe in doing is access. So we will bring it to the people.
Yeah.
So I think just watch the space. And I forgot to say, please go and subscribe to Inspire the Next YouTube channel.
Thank you. Thank you. The next one is very contextual, I guess, to the current state in our country. It's by Katleho Molati, saying, being a victim of the current economic crisis, how can one go about fulfilling the ECSA criteria when when being retrenched before attaining the required amount of experience? So, and secondly, how is the council going to reduce the reliance of employment for registration? I guess this is more from an advisory point of view.
So I think Jones is going to also come in on this one. My right hand in this empowerment issue. So what I wanted to say is, I think for me, I find that even when people were employed, right, because they do not know what the 11 outcomes are, they don't actually chase the right type of training. So the first point, I think, for everybody who's here today is just get to know what is required. And then when you are in industry, you go and chase exactly what is going to be evidence for the outcomes. And then with regards to the outcomes, the answer that is unfortunate is that for the core outcomes, so now I'm talking outcome 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, and 9, unfortunately, the only way you can really fulfill that is to be in industry. Whether you are employed, whether you are volunteering yourself in a company, unfortunately, and this is why you find people in academia are struggling to register, because lecturing an engineering subject does not count as solving engineering problems. So then it's twofold. For the core outcomes, unfortunately, you have to be in industry, whether it takes you volunteering your time to a company without being paid a salary and probably being paid some allowance. It probably needs you to do that. And then for the soft type of aspects, I'm talking about outcome 4, outcome 5, outcome ethics and that. Those are things that you can actually empower yourself. You can go read about project management, you can go read about contracts, you can go read about environmental impacts. So when you are registering as a professional, ECSA does not need you to go out there and do an EIA report, and they don't expect you to go and manage. If you have had the luxury of managing a contract, of course you've exceeded the expectation. But some of the outcomes are soft in nature. And probably what we can do is we can have a class that is going to probably help the candidates that are faced with this challenge. We will tell them exactly, for this outcome, this is how you can go about bridging it. And then I think what is core to say is that some of the people have an understanding that to get registered, you need to manage a project, a complex project. No, that is not what it's about. To be registered, you need to be solving complex engineering problems. And then the second aspect of it is you need to be managing engineering activities. So it is not managing a project. It's some engineering activity, whether it's on site, whether it's timesheet, whether it's a design report that is multidisciplinary. It's an engineering activity. But I think for today, what we can do is we will schedule a class where we can just give guidance to this, because it is indeed a worrying factor that you want to get registered, but there is no work. People are getting retrenched every day. So let me leave it there and commit that Inspire the Next will give a class that will shed some light on that. And then remember, I said next week, we are also going to be hosting a class where we talk about how can you use your research to address the 11 outcomes. I'm going to hand over to Jones.
Okay, thank you, Lebu. As you had indicated, what people do not, I'm just going to touch it on the surface and high level and say what people don't realize for you to get registered at ECSA, and I'm happy that, Lebu, you distinct that. You have to manage the activities within a project. And there are also two levels that are there. One of them is the level of responsibility where you get inducted, you get shown, you get taught, and you are on your own at level E, you are performing. And the other part is the level of progression. Other things like Lebu indicated, you just have to have appreciation thereof. For example, it does not mean that if you are not doing quantities or bill of quantities at your workplace, you don't know about bill of quantities. Sometimes you have to have the knowledge thereof that you also gain from school or from the university or where you studied. some of them requires experience depending on the nature of the outcome. So a study that is more intense, and that's what Lebo is talking about, that the next class is more now intense as to, remember today is the why part of it. The how part of it that we need to go to detail is also the next class that is going to cover that into detail. But those kind of things, and many people out there, and we were on Friday on the other work that I'm doing, we were at the one company, and then we spoke to the managing director there as well, the CEO, and we realized that many people that are in his employ are registrable, but because of lack of knowledge and not knowing where they are, it changed the game plan and say, wow, we've got so many people that are in our workforce that are registrable, but the how part of it is going to be the next class that we're going to drill deeper now as to match those outcomes as to what are the requirements, what do they mean by, say, broadly defined engineer activities, well-defined engineer activities for technicians, complex engineering activities, level descriptors that are in there, the range statements that are in there, what do they really mean? And they need also time on their own. Thank you, Lebo. Thank you, Refule.
Thank you for that, John. So if I can just touch it just a high level. If we talk about the masterclass, there's been a lot of people who have been deferred and they have been declined. But the minute they attend the masterclass, they have clarity of exactly what is needed. So nobody ever has to feel like, because what I've realized is a lot of people have the relevant work, but how they write it and what it is what is going wrong. Let me leave it there, Refula, because like we are saying, we have events that are going to give come on, this is what you need to do. This is exactly what is going to candidates. Because the candidate probably has the relevant experience, but because they are not intimate with the 11 outcomes, they don't know where to put what.
Thank you. I'd like to direct this one to Jessica. Jessica, it's from Sipelele Nsibande. He asks, as a company director, is it necessary to have a PR recognition, or can I just support my professional human resource to get this recognition?
Okay, thanks for that. Before I answer that one, I just wanted to add on to what Jones and Lebo said. And I think sometimes we have experience, all projects are different and everyone's experience and their path is different. So sometimes you talk to a friend and they'll tell you how they registered and you try to put yourself in their box. But the regulations and the guidelines are robust enough to be able to take a variety of people's experience and measure you on your experience. So I think that that's the value of the masterclass, and that gives you an in-depth understanding of how it works. And then on to the question around whether as a CEO of a firm or an owner of a firm, you should be professionally registered. So as Jones talked about earlier, there isn't the commercial element of professional registration because there's overlap between commercial and professional. Now, in an ideal world, you'll have where competition is not an issue, you'll have anyone, anywhere who can open a firm and be able to practice and all of that. We are in a profession. So as a CEO of a firm, ideally you are leading the commercial strategic direction of a company. So if you're not a registered professional, all that means is that you as an individual does not hold the professional liability of the firm, because you would have to delegate that responsibility onto a registered professional who practices in that particular discipline. So I mean, from the perspective of seeing the benefits of registration, it's encouraged that if you have an engineering firm, that you should be registered as a professional. It's not mandated, but it's recommended. And so I think that that's where we were talking about all the benefits of registration with all the international recognitions, and for us to elevate the role of the profession. It's highly recommended. But again, we must understand the commercial elements of running a business versus the professional element of, and all the risk and liability issues that come with the ECSA code of conduct that you are now subscribed to. And I think that when we lead by example, so if I have a firm and I'm not PR, and I have people who work for me and I'm like, you should get your PR. I think that it starts with us as leaders to be able to say, listen, here's my PR. I did this X number of years. And it also encourages that pipeline. And so I think that that's that from my opinion is how I feel the commercial overlaps with professional.
Thanks, Jessica. I'd like to direct the next one to Oratile. This I guess speaks to titles. From Sesetu Motlana, who says, in software engineering, there are self-taught people who go on to take roles as software engineers, and other people gain the title of software engineer through a 6-month bootcamp and other programs of that nature. So is ECSA doing any work towards the regulation of this?
Okay, well, I'm not very well positioned to speak on behalf of ECSA because, I mean, they have their requirements, right? Like Lebo spoke to with her studies abroad and certifications, like there's certain degrees that are required for you to register as a candidate engineer. So those 6-month boot camps, I think, because it's new things, maybe just check with the organization, are they recognized, yes or no? I think that would be the best course of action. I think I missed the latter half of it. But what I would like to advise, somebody in the software engineering field is that, software engineering, like I said, it touches all industries right now. It does not exist in isolation. And I was very encouraged. I mean, when I started working, I was like, hey, in ECSA, man, where do they talk about telecoms? And I saw that ECSA then came on board. There's a section for telecoms because I did not identify as a light current electrical engineer. I'm like, no, I'm a telecoms engineer. So ECSA, they like Lebo says, they keep updating themselves. So is this bootcamp stuff recognized? I don't think they are. I think it has to be a proper accredited ECSA engineering course. But I do encourage you to, follow that route to be able to register with ECSA and be recognized. Because like I said, having a body that's internationally recognized like ECSA, to have that on your CV, your marketability globally is just further improved.
Let me add to what Oratile said as well to the question. To that question, it first starts with the recognition of the educational background. In the educational background, can that what is there be substantially equated to the graduate attribute? You see, in education, we talk of the graduate attributes. In registration, we talk of the outcomes. So the measure should be there in terms of that what you did. What did you apply the science in there? Because if that is not captured very well there, it is going to be a problem if you have to go for registration. Just to make an example, just go and check on the ECSA website, download the qualification standard, the E-series document, for example, E-02PE is the qualification standard for the Bachelor of Engineering Science, and take the registration document, the R-series document, R02PE, and check. You'll see what is covered in education in the graduate attribute 1 is the mirror image now of practice that is covered in the registration document for the competence. You remember we spoke about the educational accords and the competence agreement from IEA. The other thing that binds ECSA is that by virtue of being a signatory to the international accords and the competence agreements, they have to follow the letter of what, and that's what makes ECSA unique in South Africa as a country, because we follow the same as what US is following, what Japan is following, what Korea is following, what Taiwan is following, because we are all the signatories to the same. We source from the same source. So to the person who was asking about the software engineering in that way in the boot camps, first make sure that any person who arrives at ECSA for registration, if they come from the non-accredited qualifications or the non-recognized the registration, the accreditation system, their educational background, and listen carefully, I'm not saying qualifications, we are saying educational background, because other people can be self-taught, others is recognition of prior learning. The combination thereof is going to be substantially equated to something to say, are all of these combinations substantial equivalent to a certain qualification to say, because in registration, you need to maintain a certain standard. And that's what made ECSA to become the signatory to the International Engineer Alliance. So it's not necessarily only the accredited qualification, but the combination of what the person has. As Oratile said, please take it to the Engineering Council and let it be evaluated. You'll be given an answer of substantial equivalence. Then it is taken from there. Thank you.
I think if I can add to that, Jones, when we just obviously do the masterclass, some of the fundamentals is actually elaborating on the education, because the first stage of registration is to have a qualification in an engineering, you know. So then you will see that also the duration of how long you studied is a thing. So if you come to ECSA and say, I have a BSc, it has to be some qualification that you studied for a minimum of 4 years. I don't want to labor it, but when we do the masterclass, we do go into that. Like a diploma is a qualification that, in terms of duration, is a minimum of 3 years. Because I have received a lot of questions where people ask about the N6 and the N5. So at ECSA, the thing is, it needs to be a diploma from what we used to call technicons, and now they are called University of Technology. Yeah, but I think let's not labor it too much. Okay. But what is good to note is that every category has a requirement in terms of the qualification. So diplomas are technicians, a BTech is technologist, a BSc is an engineer.
Right, good, thanks for that. I'm direct this one to Jones. It's from Christelle Kola, who says, is IPEA equivalent to other bodies such as ICE, Institute of Civil Engineers, in other countries? Okay,
that's a very good question. Let me just give a background, and many people get confused. IPEA it's an agreement inside IEA. It does not function on its own. It is an international profession. It is for the international register for the engineers that are registered in their own home countries. Now, ICE, the Institute of Civil Engineers, is an equivalent of what we have in South Africa as South African Institute of Civil Engineering, which is SAICE. It's a voluntary association. But now the difference between our own voluntary association in South Africa and the UK is that the UK VAs are licensed to do the work on behalf of Engineering Council UK. I'll give you an example. If in UK you would like to register as a civil engineer, as chartered engineer, you do not go through Engineering Council UK like you do in South Africa. You go to ICE. They've been given a license that expires to be able to carry that work on behalf of Engineering Council UK. Now in South Africa, our VAs under Section 25 of the Engineering Professions Act are only recognized, and they're not given the license to do the work on behalf of ECSA. The work is done by individuals like myself, Lebu, Jesh, and others that are registered, and Oratile, that are registered with the Engineering Council of South Africa as the volunteers in that category. So if it was formalized in South Africa, it would have been for civil engineers, or the civil engineering discipline, it will be SAICE as a licensed voluntary association on behalf of Engineering Council of South Africa. So that's the distinction between. But the IPM, IET, and the APEC, Washington Accord, all of those are just the agreements and accords inside the IEA. They are not necessarily, although they have I'm the executive chair of IETA, but we are not a standalone. Hence, we report to an executive committee inside IEA called the governing group. By virtue of being the chair and the deputy chair, we become on the governing group like the EXCO of the IEA. So those are not the standalone, are just the agreements and accords that are inside the International Engineer Alliance.
Okay, thanks, Jones.
Pleasure, Rafile.
I want to direct this one to Jessica. Does ECSA recognize engineering management role or function as a suitable measure to maintain ECSA PR-Eng, or is it rather requires professionals to remain in a technical professional role for one to maintain their PR status?
So I think
Okay.
I think Jones and Level will comment, but as we talked about earlier, the 11 outcomes sets out the type of work that you would need to do. So engineering management being one of them. In your personal experience, if you're able to demonstrate compliance with those 11 outcomes, it doesn't mandate that you need to change your job or that you need to then get specific experience. So I do think that in the, there was also another question around project management and if you're doing engineering management and how you go about registering. So you'll find that, as I said, everyone's story is really very different. And until you've done a matrix of your own assessment against the outcomes, and if you are meeting in your categories complex, solving complex problems, then your experience is valid. But I think Jones and Lebo, you can also answer on this one.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Let me assist on that one. Just go a little bit step backwards. All the qualifications in South Africa that, because, okay, how it works is when a university, I'm talking now from academia, wearing an academic hat, when an institution, like for example, with the HUQSF that came on board, wants to, the university or the institution want to offer a new program, the first call of entry is to do what we call, we apply for program qualification mix in the university, and the highest decision body in the university is the Senate of the university, the academia of the university. Once that has been cleared, it goes then for the application to CHE, but CHE, Council on Higher Education, will say, if this is a qualification that leads to registration, either in nursing, either in law to become an advocate, did the professional body that is recognized in the country endorse it? Reason being, it is going to be unfair that when people finish or graduate finish an engineering qualification, they want to register with the professional body. Like for example, ECSA will say, no, we don't know about this BSc qualification. You never informed us. That's how the system works. So once that endorsement is done, it goes back to the university by the engineering council. Now with the engineering council is that it must meet the 10 graduate attributes. That's where I wanted to get to. Now they are not, I mean, they are no longer 10, they are now 11. There was a lot of discussion and debate to say, people saying they are doing engineering management. Now it's very interesting to say, okay, where did you study engineering management? No university offers that, or no higher institution. It is only a postgraduate and at the master's level. For example, there's no BSc in engineering management. There's no diploma in engineering management. It only comes at the master's level. And it's a narrow field of that. Reason being, it is a specialized field when you progress in your workplace in that. So what ECSA did, because they could not have this, like the question is asking, as a stand-alone on its own, it has now been made from 2019 document inside ECSA on the qualification standard as a graduate attribute, the 11th graduate attribute. So they've increased from 10 to 11 now. There used to be 10 graduate attributes, 11 outcomes. Now you've got 11 now, but the 11th one is engineering management as a graduate attribute from studying. So what they are saying, in our new qualifications, those of like us that have got the legacy qualifications, we have missed the boat. We don't have engineering management as a graduate attribute. The new qualifications have got that as an attribute. It is not now in the registration. Reason being, and if you ask the people that are doing engineering management, you ask them, what is engineering management? They are unable to define it. Is it project management? What is it that, when you say engineering, what engineering are you managing? Does engineering need management? It's not that it's not there, but until such time that that is explained, but it could only be explained in an educational setup in the E-series document of ECSA, whereby it's now a graduate attribute that, okay, because now we've seen a gap, you cannot expect with something that is at the master's level to want to use it as for registration if it's not in the base qualification like the fundamental. So it has been now made as a fundamental that, okay, it can be made, but it becomes dicey and difficult to measure it as an outcome because it's also not in the IEA requirements. Hence, it could not be a standalone. Now, as we spoke, myself and Lebo, the IEA has got about 17 outcomes. You can combine them and say, for example, in this one, we combine project management, engineering management, program management, and we come up with something out there that we call management of engineering activities. And we'll have that already in group B of the outcomes. Group B outcome 4 refers to that. For example, how do you manage yourself? Now, when it goes to group C, which is the impact of engineering work, it also ties to that. That is outcome 6 and 7 in terms of which regulations or bylaws that you apply in there. So it has been split. It is there already in registration, but not as a standalone. And it's up to the applicant to indicate that in the soft part or the soft requirements of the outcomes, which is group B and group C, which part thereof is the engineering management knowledge applied in there. And the other thing that also, if you check on the BSc, IT or information technology used to be a graduate attribute. It has been removed. The reason being, and even at the IEA level, they are saying a computer nowadays is a tool that you use to get somewhere. It cannot be a graduate attribute because even people who did not study are able to use the information technology. Hence, it has now been removed. So those kind of things go as, like Uratile said about the STEM, and I did not know I have to be fair. Now it's STEAM now because of the animation that is there for the artificial intelligence and virtual reality as well. So things that are an addition to what is happening, we have to be very careful at where do we place that. I think I've covered it by giving it both on the educational part of it, and again on the registration, it is spread across those outcomes. It will never be a standalone engineering management. But on the education part is now a new graduate attribute that if you check the ECSA documents that were reviewed and came late last year in 2019 as the 11th graduate attribute. Thank you, Chair.
Let me just add to that, Jones. I just want to cover an angle. Jones has conclusively addressed if you want to get registered. Now, if we talk CPD, which is after being professional, what I normally actually say to people is that, because a lot of people lose their registration because of CPD. Once you know what the 3 categories are, you are going to understand that category 1 is actually more suitable for somebody who is building their competence, isn't it? Because you are still learning how to design a power line, how to do earthing and the likes. But the nature of engineering forces us to become managers, to become executives, to become, so obviously once you are registered as a professional engineer or technologist or whatever, what you are going to be using as CPD points is going to be things like presenting at a conference, writing a paper for SIGRE, doing postgraduate studies. A master's is a whole 5 CPD points. So that's what we want you guys to be conscious of, that CPD does not just refer to category 1, where it is a CPD accredited course. For me, I definitely will do a class where we will just say to people, okay, when you are registered, how do you go about fulfilling your CPD requirements without putting holes in your pocket? Because I think a lot of people go for CPD accredited courses. Actually, many other ways of getting CPD. You become a volunteer at ECSA, you get CPD. You are an assessor, you're a reviewer, you sit in council, you get CPD. Let me leave it there.
Thank you. There seems to be confusion with this matter, and maybe it's a perfect platform to hash it out. The question is, it says, is it possible for someone who first started or graduated with a B-Eng tech and eventually ends up having a qualification of M-Eng or MSc, can they still be registered as a PR-Eng, or they can only register as a PR-Eng technologist?
Oh, that question. I'm so glad that today Jones is here.
Can I address it?
The background that I normally give before you give the detail. Because I think at this point, I've said so much that definitely I need somebody to echo it. Refile, so to the candidate who's posing this question, I always make a distinction between the old educational framework, and the easiest way to explain it is technology, the technicons. If you have your BTech from a technicon versus a BTech from a University of Technology, as per the new framework, Those are two different streams. So I always say to the guys, these old BTECs from the Technicon are actually getting eradicated. I think there's a year or two left for those BTEC graduates to finish. So definitely, if you've done the old BTEC as per the Technicon model, you cannot become PRNG. That's the side. If you started your qualification as per the new educational framework, which is the University of Technology, there is a clearly defined path how you can move from a diploma or whatever qualification to end up being PRNG. I think the confusion here is that in the new framework, they do have an MEng that allows somebody with a BTEC to become PRNG. That MEng is not the same MEng that we are currently doing at VETS. Remember, a master's has got an MSc and an MEng. That MEng is not the same MEng as this MEng that has a candidate arriving to PRNG. So I actually, what I'm going to do, Refile, when we share the material to the candidates, I'm going to attach a presentation that explains this very fact. We actually had a workshop at Gold Reef City where industry was actually invited. We explained so thoroughly, and I think it is heartbreaking for somebody to realize that there is no crediting the legacy system BTEC to the new framework. There is literally, but let me let Jones put it in another way. But I think the best comfort that we can give to our attendees is that we are going to attach that presentation to the presentation that we did today. And then they will see for themselves that there is a clearly defined path for the University of Technology. But if you come from a Technicon, there is no crediting.
Thanks, Lewu. Thanks, Refilo, and thanks for the question. That question normally pops up all the time. Let us explain. Let's go back a little bit step backwards in the education system or the whole registration system, how it works. Before ECSA became the signatory to the International Engineering Alliance, it used to have what they used to call it the old man's laws. I don't know why they left the word women's laws. Anyway, they used to call it the old man's laws. You know, the patriarchy that we have in the world. Now, in that, if you worked for 10 years or 20 years, whatever, then you could, with a diploma without a qualification, register as the professional engineer. That has been scrapped off. Reason being, we are now part of the global village whereby the things are done differently. If in terms of that, it's about in whatever that the person has done, and I think that's where people maybe we need to make a clear distinction. The diploma and the BTECs or the former technicons, as Lebo said, the engineering technology, let me call it that way, are a different set of qualifications that have got the broadly defined, they've got a different characteristic towards the fundamentals. If you remember, the previous qualifications never had physics and chemistry as fundamentals in there. For example, maths will end maybe at maths 3, but in the engineer sphere, whereby it's the engineering science, maths will go until year 3 or year 4. Now, in the old qualifications that are from the technicons, as we say, it used to be per semester. So if you did maths 1, maths 2 to be in 1 year, whereby the engineers will do maths in first year, second year, you talk of 4 semesters of maths. It's not the same substantial equivalence. Now, that is on the qualification side. Now, and I think people ask questions very in a wrong way to use the word register. If it's not the qualification that makes you register, that will get you registered. It is the qualification, it is the legibility, the first step, stage 1, to get you closer to registration. It is the competence of the experience that you gain in industry aligned to the 11 outcomes that are required for you to get registered. You can have even a BEng and work for 20 years and find that, but the experience or the work that you have done, experience that you have done for 20 years is equating to a 1-year competence that is required for registration. And I think we need to make that distinction, because people say, hey, I've done a master's at this university, I've come with a diploma in a BTEC, I've done master's. Can I become an engineer? So, okay, well, the word engineer is not protected in South Africa. Yes, you can become an engineer. What do you mean by that? But professional engineer is a different ball game, because you need to meet certain requirements that are there. The fundamentals are there in place. Now, going back a little bit step forward is that in the qualification sphere, with that combination of that you have, and I'll use an example, all the postgraduate qualifications are narrow field, even for the engineers. If you do a master's now, it is the former BTechs were narrow field. It's either in transportation engineering, leave structures out, leave water engineering out, or hydraulics, leave geotechnical engineering out, and leave on so on. So are you meeting the requirements of the E02 PE qualification standard at the complex level? That's where the first question must come. And you'll find that, but I don't have the fundamentals that are required. Will I be able to work a problem from first principles? Those are the kind of questions that, were you taught that? Do you have that educational knowledge in place before you can be considered for registration? So it's not just about attaining qualification. And hence, people were asking, but why do we have to go through the educational background? I said, it is because to test that. Remember, your qualification and all the postgraduate qualifications, even in South Africa, are not accredited. It's only the base qualification that's currently all those that lead to registration. Now, Lebo touched on a very big point, and I was part of that setup as well, representing the International Engineering Alliance with the masters. What ECSA has done, not to leave those people out, is that they've created a 140 credits master's Master of Engineering, which is a coursework master's. There's a professional master's and there's a research master's. This master's is more or less the same as the BSc, the final year of the BSc in engineering to meet those requirements. So that, and it works like this. You need to have the Bachelor of Engineering Technology, the one on the HGQSF, the new one on NQF level 7. Then after that, you need to do the postgraduate diploma, which is on NQF level 8, which is equivalent now to the BSc, whereby the master's pitches up now at NQF level 9. Or if you don't have the postgraduate diploma in engineering, the new one, then you're going to take over, or rather have the Bachelor of Engineering honors. And those qualifications, we are still busy with the endorsement at ECSA. They've never been done. And I'm happy that Lebo touched on that. All the people that have got the master's degree, like myself, I've got 2 master's degrees in engineering, one in engineering technology, one in engineering science, are not substantially equivalent because those were research masters, not aligned for the registration purposes. So there's no university at the moment or higher education institution in the country that offers that. So the masters that people are referring to at the moment will not be equated to that one, and it's under E-22P document that is on the ECSA website as well. That one is more, it talks about the graduate attributes. Those that we did and those that people have now do not have the graduate attributes. So you have to go through the educational evaluation system at ECSA, whereby they use the E17P document, PRO document. In the E17P, they say, if you don't have the necessary requirements to match the graduate attribute and the fundamentals, then they look at your work experience. But in your work experience, what they mean, prove that what you have done in your workplace is the same as the student who studied the 4-year BSc. It is up to the applicant to prove that. Now, most of the time you find it is hard to find that because in a workspace, you are working towards competency, not necessarily towards education. And it becomes dicey. And they say, okay, by missing 1, 2, 3, then the applicant should go and do 1, 2, 3 to close that gap. Else, ECSA will lose its signatory status at the end. And that's what made ECSA to become a member to the engineering, the Washington Accord, the Sydney Accord, and Dublin Accord. I'll use an example of UK. In the UK now meaning including Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and England. That's what forms UK. But Great Britain then exclude Northern Ireland. Now, in those countries, if you can graduate with a 3-year Bachelor of Engineering Science, but you'll not get to be registered by Engineering Council UK via their VAs. You need to do a 2-year master's. That is not a research master's, our same as our own master's. They call it a 3+2. It's then that you can register as a chartered engineer. Now, in what they have, so it means the Bachelor of Engineering 3 years in UK is equivalent to a 3rd year of a BSc in South Africa. Now, to add that 1 year, they've added a dissertation that takes it 2 years, but the first year is the same as the final year of our BSc. So our 4-year BSc in South Africa is equivalent to a 3-year BSc of UK plus the 2-year Masters of UK. Hence, we come out the same as a PReng and as a chartered engineer. I think, Lebo, with your permission, we can have on the master class a more detailed, deeper grilling into that and explain and seeing what does the applicant or the candidate have in terms of that combination of qualifications, so that we can advise much better aligned to the graduate attribute, because there is no way that you will pass through that wall of educational background without it being evaluated for substantial equivalence so that it can get to the same. The reason being, it becomes unfair to somebody who spent 4 years doing a 4-year BSc and somebody come with a lesser year that they spend and being unable to do a substantial equivalence to that. And I'm not saying it is incorrect. And most of the time, the applicants that come, they are unable to indicate that. For example, people in registration at the paper stage, Jones Mulisani can help you to fill it in. Ms. Lebuma Pumulo can assist you. Ms. Jessica Ramchand can assist you to fill in the application form. Competency will be indicated. It will go through the stages. But when you get for the final professional review, the PR, it is the demonstration of that experience. Now, many people who don't make it, they come back and say, hey, it's very unfair from the extra reviewer saying, I don't have experience. No, they are not saying you don't. They're saying that experience that you have, you fail to demonstrate it to the reviewers. And that's the difference in there. I think, Chair, let me leave it there for now. Yeah. Thank you.
I think a good conclusive way to show the differences between the old and the new is in the old system, guys. You remember there was a P1, P2. In the new diploma, there is no P1, P2. It is all theoretical. And then also what you need to be really conscious of is even if you want to become a PRN, it's going to take you 5 years, unlike somebody who did a BSc who will spend 4 years. So it's about fundamentals. A master's is literally zooming into some area of specialization. It does not cover fundamentals. Refula, we'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you for the thorough assessment. I feel that that's a question that comes up a lot, and I hope that attendees have fully grasped what you've said. I'd like to address the next question to Jessica and Oratile, because it speaks about the the networking aspect. From Nompumulelo saying, in extension to the next movement, are there any particular networking platforms that you can recommend an engineer to be part of? Jessica or Ratile?
Okay, I'll take it first. So there are so many platforms and associations and industry bodies that one can join, and it's really three aspects. One is what are your end goals, and how can you set a roadmap that will help you to align to those bodies. So if you are in a very technical stream, then you align a lot more with what's happening in terms of technology advances, in terms of what's happening in your professional stream. If you are in a more general management aspect, then similarly you'll find that there are so many different platforms that you can engage on. But and the second part is that you also need to be able to see how will this aid in your registration journey, and everything really needs to complement each other, which is why at the earliest possible stage, once you've graduated, you really need to sit down with the outcomes and be able to charter a course for how you want to register. So there's your wish list in terms of what do I want to do, and then there's the reality, which is what can industry, my employer, the economy, the pandemic offer me. And then those two things, eventually they'll get close to each other and they might go far apart. But the problem is, and as Lebo said, you need to plan. And if you don't have a plan, you get to your end goal by accident. And so if you are deliberate about your plan, when you bump into Jones at an industry event and you ask him, how can I do something? If you've got a plan, someone can direct their guidance to help you to ultimately get to where you want to go. So I think at the soonest possible point, you need to start thinking with the end in mind. And once you get registered, it doesn't stop there. It's like, right, I've got my PR. Now what next? And what next? And what next? And so that way you continuously growing, and CPD puts you in that mindset of saying, I have PR, but it's not the end. barely just the certificate to move you to the next level. And if you think about your career in stages, this is a ladder that you're going to climb. And so ultimately, you need to see if whatever volunteer work and associations you belong to, if they're adding to if the rungs are adding up above your head, then it's a worthwhile effort to be able to feed into. But if you find, listen, I'm putting so much in, I'm not learning anything, and people are not learning from me, then you already know, listen, this is not really something that's benefiting you. But you must start with the end in mind.
Yeah, Jessica really encompassed everything that I wanted to say. Spot on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we've got a question from Mohale Maboko, which is quite blunt. Does PR technician have value? And can you sign off drawings as a PR technician?
Okay, in the registration, every person has got his own role in wherever they function in their own space. And it goes back to the code of conduct. The code of conduct is very clear in that you need to be able to can do the work that you have, the education thereof. And I like the way they wrote that. They are not saying qualification, they say education. So over and above qualification, you can have a certain experience that is education that you educated yourself to, and the work that you are competent to do. You will find that even the people that are professional engineers, in structures, for example, somebody will say, I can only do double-story building. I cannot do the multiple-story building. And somebody say, as a technologist, I can do that, or vice versa. It is your competency that you find that makes you legible to do everything that is required in there. The code of conduct covers that. So it's not about the registration part of it. It's about the competency that you have. A registration is it's a license that has been given to you to operate and to take responsibility and for accountability. But it's more about the competency that you have to be able to do something. Even in your normal work, and I'll take it back to, I've been involved in many investigations and tribunals inside ECSA, whereby you find a civil engineer who specializes in transportation engineering commits a mistake, or they do things wrong in transportation engineering, not in geotechnical engineering, in their own space that they operate in, where they say they are competent. Now imagine if they have to go outside that to go into structures, to go into geotechnical engineering and others and so on and so on. It's going to be worse. So it is more about the competence, and you as a person needs to be confident that I'll be able to can do that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Jones, I just wanted to add to that, because I always share with mentees that when you get registered, we all notice how it says PR range. It doesn't say PR range. Like, for example, I work with power lines. It doesn't say PR range, power line design. It does not. So what the code of conduct says is that you can expand your competencies as long as it's within your discipline, meaning to say, I'm electrical, I can't now suddenly go and design a foundation. As long as that thing is encompassed by the discipline, which is electrical, I can expand. But you cannot practice until you are competent. The interesting thing about competence is that nobody can tell you if you are competent or not. So it goes back to ethics and integrity. Competence speaks to you being able to give solutions that are safe for the public, the environment, equipment. So you just need to do right by the public. These are innocent people. And once you know that conclusively, I can preempt all the risks, I can mitigate the risks, then you can expand your area of competence into something else. So I think, Jones, it was important to say that. I think I must also add, the candidates also get confused because when you register, it says your referees need to be PR range. It doesn't say PR range in your discipline. It says PR range. And the reason for that is because the 11 outcomes are the same. And that's why even when I do a case study class, I encourage people to not pay attention to whether it's civil, it's electrical, because the principles of how you address the outcomes is the same.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. You've touched a bit on this question, but maybe it would be important to just advise, because I think a lot of candidates struggle with this. Well, the question is from Maluburo Asikeng. What happens if the company one works for is completely not aligned with 11 outcomes?
No, it's an easy one to answer. Can I assist? No company in the world wherever is aligned to any 11 outcomes. It's not a company, it's the work that one is doing. And as Lebu said it straight, and it's and Jessica touched on that as well. And it also goes back to, it is the work, it is the engineering activity that is in the work that is being done. I'll give an example. When client bodies give work, they are not saying this work is for engineers, it's for technicians, it's for technologies, and this work is for registration. It's up to the individual to take out of there that is going to be, and that's why before, most of us, I did not go through the graduate attributes. I went through a legacy system whereby it has to be project-based, whereby we were forced, and that's why it took long to register in the past. That is, and I don't have control to where I work. If I work for somebody, to say I want to be involved from start to finish in the project, I can slaughter in number 7 and they remove me to the other one. It's their choice. So now they tailor-made it easy to say the work that needs to be done, it is more on these outcomes in that measure, take out of the work that you do, what is in there. And Lebu touched on that to say, for example, other soft parts are already been done and people are not aware of that. Those things have been covered already. So in the work that you do, it's not, engineering work is engineering work. And the complexity of the work will determine whether this work requires the knowledge of a technician or the knowledge. Now, remember I spoke about the level of progression and the level of responsibility. So now it's then to come, so no, this one will require at the beginning an engineer, but when it moves further, it will require this person. And that's why we work together. It can never be a standalone work that is by that person and so on and so on. So it is more towards the work that the company is doing, that what you as an applicant or a candidate is taking out of it and measuring that towards the 11 outcomes, that you match that to it. The yardstick is the 11 outcomes. And every work has somewhere, somehow define and investigate, either develop solutions or design, either you take responsibility, either you make a judgment call on the work that you do. So those elements will be there. One way or the other, the work will have an impact of some social nuisance somewhere or some environmental impacts in the work. So many people are not aware of, take first the outcomes, measure that to the work, not the other way around. Don't do the work and say later, but hey, it's not aligned to the outcome and blame the company or the work itself. And that's why we are there. I always like, we're in a space where I am in consulting as well, apart from academia, to say clients pay for my opinion. I make an opinion about the work that they say this is a scope of work, do this for us. I make my opinion and they pay for the opinion. And that's the nice thing about it, because I determine how this should go, aligned to the requirements of the clients and their bylaws, the regulations and the guidelines that are there. And I think Jessica is more in that space, in the consulting space, whereby our opinion matters most. And that's why we are consultants as well. And as you can check on Lebu's side, they receive our work and they guide us as the client to say, hey, this needs to be done in this way as per our requirements. And we call what you call the meeting of minds to see the same goal together at the end of the day. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Jones, just to add to that, I think in my initial talk, I did say a good way to do is to have a tick sheet. Outcome 1, have I done it at the right level of responsibility? And is it at the right level of complexity? Because now when you are in industry, like John says, it does happen that a technician does engineering work and an engineer does technician work. So it's for you to understand the characteristics of a complex problem and to ensure that what you engage in at work is not off the tangent. And you can't do that if you don't know the outcomes. And that's why we literally bring the master classes so that you don't waste your time. There's a lot of people who work for 10 years, 5 years, and then they discover that I'm an engineer, but I've been doing routine work. That person won't get registered. So it's good to just be intimate with what the outcomes are, and then you align the work. Another point I want to add is more often than not, it is not actually possible to sometimes fulfill all 11 outcomes in one place. That's why we've got this thing of being seconded. If you know what's missing, you say to your boss, I'm going to this department to go bridge the gap for this missing outcome. That is just how it is. So we don't do reverse. We don't work and then you rather know what the 11 outcomes are, and then you get the experience to address the outcome.
If I may just add something, I think one of the things that Jones talked about was that when you're working in the private sector, the commercial elements of running a business sometimes overrides the experience that a company wants to give their candidates. And I think that there's elements that you need to understand, that your company may resource you on a project that you feel this is repetitive, and there's tendering requirements that will ask for someone with repetitive type of experience to demonstrate competence. And sometimes those things cross each other, which is also where the role of your mentor and your supervisor, your workplace supervisor, is really important. Because as much as you will have someone who champions you, there's also the commercial element of the business. Ultimately, you also want to be paid your salary. So it's being able to keep all those things in mind with the end goal that you want to register. Also bearing in mind that your company's, at the back of your company or your director's mind is not that your registration is his or her priority. And so it should eventually go along the same roadmap because it's of benefit, but also bear in mind that especially now when unemployment is high, things are not great in the sector, that when we're in a dip, that sometimes it might come at the risk of your experience. But to bear in mind those things, also when you're considering jumping a job, think about those things, about whether your experience is going to do this or that, or it's going to take you to the next level. And that's the multifaceted world that we live in. And you put your problem-solving skills to the test.
And I think what I want to add to that, Jesh, that is another a myth or a perception. It's the wrong perception that people have. People think that you need to use one project to address all 11 outcomes. And that is not correct. How you address the outcomes can come from different pieces of experience in industry. What is core to do is to have the right level of complexity and the right level of responsibility. So remember what I said about an EIA. ECSA does not expect an engineer to go do an environmental assessment. But what they do expect an engineer to do is mitigate the impacts and the risks that the environmental impact has identified. So you will see when you're dealing with outcome 7, I think it is, outcome 6, which is impact of the environment. They just want you to be conscious that any engineering project you do will have some impact. And your job is to take the solution with the least impact on the people and the environment.
Just to add to that level, you touched it very well to say outcome 6 and 7, because the environmental one, if you check it is in outcome 6, yes. But in outcome 7, that's where it talks about the bylaws, the regulations and laws. Then in the acts, then NEMA comes in place, National Environmental Management Act. So already with that piece of environmental, you have covered both the outcomes. So in a way, registration, I don't want to use the word, it has been tailor-made, easier compared to the way we come from in the legacy system, whereby it's like, you know, it was more about project, not about the engineering activities. So the bottom line is, in the work that you do, look for the engineering activities. And Oratile, I think you also went through the same when you got registered, that the bits and pieces that were there were making you up to become a competent person in the whole sphere of things that are happening.
All right. Right, thanks for that. President, I'd like to propose that we consolidate the rest of the questions and send them to the panelists. Then we'll then send the rest of the questions to...
Before, Refule, I just have one that I need to address, and I think I recorded it. It's from Johanna Ngobo about what about the mobility of PR certificated engineers. If you allow me, let me address it. Across the whole world, the certificated engineers are a peculiar animal for South Africa only. You don't find them anywhere in the world. And when you go to the outside world, when you talk about that, even outside the IES sphere, people ask you, what is that? And if you check now, even at ECSA, those people, when they register, they fall under the sphere mostly of the Department of Minerals and Energy. Like, for example, I'm from civil engineering, Jessica will know. We don't have certificated engineers. It's only in electrical, in mining, and in mechanical engineering, whereby you've got for the factories and all of those. And those are not under ECSA. They are more under the sphere of the Department of Labor. That it is more to take responsibility outside your norm of engineering. Because why? Somebody who's got a diploma and is registered as a PR technique, by virtue of doing the certificate, that part of, it's more of like a professional registration on a separate, on its own. They become professional certificated engineers. So it is a peculiar animal to South Africa compared, and I can just give a history where that is coming from. Before the formalization of registration and education, people who worked in the mines were not offered any recognition, and hence they came with it to say, these people are able to manage the risk in the mines or in the factories, or for maintenance purposes, that the conveyor belt does not stop the works. What recognition can it be given to them? And hence they were called certificated engineers at that stage. We can talk along about it, but that's the bolts and the nuts about the certificated engineer. So at the IEA, it is not recognized, it is not there because first thing is start with what qualification should one go and study to become a certificated engineer? It's anybody can come with any qualification. It's more of a professional registration that comes after you've got any qualification out there. And as it says, it's not in civil engineering and other sectors, it's only in mining, electrical and mechanical, and only in certain spheres as well. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Thank you, Jones, for just clarifying that for us. Yeah, as per my previous statement, all the questions will be consolidated and we'll send to all the panelists. We'll try our best to make sure that we respond to everyone that were not answered. First, I propose that we have Jessica, Jones, and Uratile, that maybe you can give us the vote of thanks and close the event for us.
So before we hand over to close and Aura, I just wanted to just make this small announcement that for all the people that have attended, and more specific, those who are candidates, the prize we will be giving away today is actually a free masterclass. But what they should be noting is this masterclass is only going to be open for a week. So starting tonight, we are going to close it next week, Friday. If you make the time to go to the YouTube channel, let me just say the name again. If you go to YouTube, you put in Inspire the Next Movement, you follow that and you subscribe, I will post there a masterclass that people can go watch, more specifically the people who are not clear on what is required to register. It will only be open for a week. Actually, for Women's Month, I also opened it for a week, but I think only 15 or 18 people viewed it. So this just goes to show that if you want something, if you are hungry for something, you need to make the time. You know, Jones spoke about the follow-up event that we are going to have. So this is a similar nature, but you are going to be getting it free of charge. So that's just my prize that I want to give away today for everyone who made time to attend. And if you don't go before next week, Friday, price is gone. Thank you, Rifilwe.
Jessica? Closing remarks?
So I think this has been such a phenomenal session. And I hope that it's been useful for everyone. But as we've said, this is the first of many engagements, and you can reach out to all of us on social media. I think you don't have to worry about where you're going to see us, because you can send us queries and we'll help as best as we can. So it's the first part of a long journey, and we're really here to get as many people registered as possible. And that's really what we're here for.
Ratile?
I just want to firstly say thank you to ECSA for the invite to be part of this function. It's quite awesome. And let's just continue plowing back, and let's pull in as many engineers in our country, in our continent, and let's be the reference. Let's us Africans be the people who are referenced in technical papers and all of those things. That's the goal. So let's get there together.
Super.
Jones?
Thank you, Refile. First, let me thank the president, first, Ms. Maphumulo, with this vision. She's been having this vision for long, and we used to talk about it. And when we went internationally as well, and we realized when we went to Botswana that a lot is not known at international level. And we discussed it, and I said to her, we might be going to upgrade on the international level next door, but I think it's equally times 100 at home. And you can see today with the attendance as well that a lot of information is missing from here at home. And I also, in absentia, I'd like to thank, and when we discussed this with the president, I said to the president, engage the CEO of the Engineering Council of South Africa. And you'll see they'll come on board and they'll give us a go ahead. And this, what you're talking about, attendees and to everyone, is more about our personal experience. That is the true story of what we have gone through. And we are giving back back to the, the hashtag plowback. It was used by a colleague of ours, Mr. T.C. Madikani, when he was the president of SIEE, South African Institute of Electrical Engineers, when he was the president, saying hashtag plowback. And that stuck with me to say, what we have done, and like Lebu indicated and all of the people, that the path that we went through, we don't want to see other people going through that path. Let us make it easy for those that are coming behind us. Many nations that are ahead of us have done that to achieve. So if we suffered for the whatever reasons that were there, we don't want the next people to suffer. And we are doing this out of our own free will to make sure that the other people that are in our space, our profession, become better. I did a study to match other professions. If you check, although the auditors had their challenges in the past, the lawyers, the chartered accountants, the medical practitioners, and so on, they look after their profession. We don't look after our profession. And if we didn't start yesterday, let us start now. And thanks for the invite, President and colleagues, and meeting Jesh and Noratile and Refilwe and others as well. I come a long way with the President because we were together in council of 2012 to 2016. She continued with the 5th term of council that will end soon as well. And when people share, there's always a great minds alike. When we share the ideas, we always came to the agreement and saw the same vision and the same goal of what this accumulation that we have, we can give it back to the community. And that's what we are doing now to our profession as well, because tomorrow is not what the country can do for us or the profession, it's what we can do for the country and what we can do for the profession. I ended there. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, Refila, in closing, before you just obviously play I just want to extend an invitation for those who are still going to get registered. Please join us on the 4th of April. Don't forget that date. And then I leave it by saying, together we are stronger. I repeat, together we are stronger. The only way we are going to change the stats of registration is for us to present.
Chair, I think maybe just the president just said the 4th of April, September, I guess. I think is it September?
September, 4th of September, we'll be having a master class on research outcomes. Yeah, 4th of September. Thank you for that, June.
No problem.
All right, thank you, Chair. And again, thanks to everybody. There's one person that was also critical to this webinar, and that's Ayanda. So we'd like to also thank Ayanda for assisting and making this a possibility. Just to close off with 2 points, Chair, that you mentioned, Oppress, that life is full of opportunities, and then let's remove any self-limiting beliefs. With that said, good evening and enjoy the rest of your night.